Welcome to Centrist Report. My name is Gene Pike. As you know, political parties will raise issues they believe will help them win the election. And of course, this election cycle is no different. The two main parties, Democrats and Republicans, have chosen the ones they believe will help them with their campaign. The economy, security on the southern border, abortion, crime, both are running on the threat to democracy. The Democrats feel Trump will turn the country into authoritarian rule. Republicans feel Harris will turn the country into a socialist society. There are other issues that both are putting forth, but I believe these are the ones getting the most attention. Today I'm going to talk about the one that gets mischaracterized and gets more attention than it deserves, that being the economy. One of the things that appears to become a norm in presidential elections is we look at things through a 4-year window. That includes the economy, and that our economy hinges on which candidate and party we put in place. Somehow one president to the next don't blend together. The economic policy of one president doesn't affect the economic policy of the next president. I don't know exactly when in history economics became a political campaign issue, but I've been frustrated for years that we put so much importance on something the sitting president has very little control over. To believe a president can affect day-to-day grocery prices or gas prices in the short term is something I find completely irrational. A day-to-day economy doesn't work that way. Polls suggest people trust Trump more than Harris with the economy. This conclusion isn't based in reality. Just like with Trump's TV show The Apprentice, this is fantasy. It's all about perception. There is a key word to listen for: under. If you listen closely to what pundits say, they all say something to the effect the economy under this president or that president. They say this because they know the economy isn't affected per se by said president. The economy is going to go in one direction or another regardless of what president is in power. And that's because there are other outside forces at play. For example, the COVID pandemic. Trump will claim the economy was better under him. But let's remember, Trump came into an economy that was already thriving. Donald Trump took office with a healthy economy. His first 3 years pretty much mirrored Obama's last 3 years. Republicans like to ask, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Using the same line Ronald Reagan used almost 45 years ago. It wasn't relevant then, and it's not relevant now. 4 years ago was 2020, and we were in the grips of a 100-year pandemic. Republicans don't ask, are you better off today than you were 5 years ago? By most accounts, Trump handled the pandemic badly. His response has come with a lot of criticism. At times it was incoherent and pathetic. Trump contradicted himself on multiple occasions. But although the near complete shutdown of the country that put us on the trajectory for the economic downturn wasn't Trump's fault. He didn't shut down the country. The governors and other entities did. You hear a lot about his negotiation skills from the right, and yet the country went in a direction they opposed. And because they like to paint a narrative that cannot be proved, such as things would be so much better if only Trump was in charge. But for the most part, Trump gets a pass on the year of the pandemic, as if for some reason it didn't happen under his time in office. Ask yourself, what policy did Trump put into place in 2020 to help Americans recover from the pandemic? Perhaps the stimulus he put forth, did it add to inflation? Joe Biden, on the other hand, came into office with the economy that was in the dumps. So Trump gets a pass on the year 2020 because of the pandemic. At the same time, Joe Biden gets no leeway for the fact he walked into an economy in free fall. One reason Joe Biden is blamed for the inflation, his stimulus measures put too much money into the economy. But the first stimulus measures were put in place in 2020 during the Trump administration. It also seems odd to me there is no talk about the fact Trump's 2017 tax cuts are still in effect, and they appear to have no effect on the economy. Are Trump's tax cuts putting too much money into the economy? By the way, Biden's stimulus package, like the Infrastructure Act, is spread over 10 years. I'll say it again, it's all about perception. There is a difference between what a political party is campaigning on and what is actually happening. Joe Biden also gets blamed for high gas prices. Again, not based in reality. Joe Biden did put a moratorium on oil drilling leases on federal land, But within 6 months, a federal judge reversed that. Plus, oil prices are dictated by Wall Street. Oil is a world commodity. It's not just what's happening in America. And what Joe Biden tried to do affect only 10% of leasing in America. The majority are on private land, and leases are spread over 10 years and can be extended. There are currently thousands of leases on federal land that have not been started in production, and that's because oil companies will not invest unless oil prices are high enough to make them a profit. The fact there has been more oil produced under Biden than under Trump. It's political rhetoric that steers people to believe something is true, not the facts that actually formulate the truth. But don't get me wrong, there are things that could affect a person's finance from one administration to the next that they sign into law. For example, in 1983, when President Ronald Reagan signed a law that some receiving Social Security benefits will be taxed. Social Security payments were not taxed before that at any level. Donald Trump is now campaigning on eliminating income tax on Social Security, essentially repealing the law Ronald Reagan signed. President Richard Nixon opened relations with China back in 1970, and I think we all understand the effect that has had on our economy. It sometimes seems that everything that's sold here is made in China, and American manufacturing moved operations to China for cheaper labor. Nixon also took us off the gold standard and other measures that still affect us today. After the Great Recession of 2008-2009, there were regulations put in place on the banking industry, which likely have a positive influence on the financial industry today. During Franklin Roosevelt's term in office, we've seen some of the most profound laws passed in American history: Social Security, unemployment, the GI Bill, all contributing to the health of the economy today. Side note, J.D. Vance, who is running to be Vice President of the United States, went to Yale University on the GI Bill. There are many laws like these that are put into place that have a positive or negative impact. They are far-reaching and long-term, and they may not be felt for years or perhaps decades. There are measures that are put in place that do have an effect on the economy, but for the most part, they are invisible to the consumer. For example, oil and gas industry has been receiving subsidies amounting to billions and billions of dollars for more than 100 years. Congressional appropriations, commonly known as the Farm Bill, was first enacted in 1933 and subsidizes agricultural activity all over the country. One entity that has a large effect is the Federal Reserve, an independent government agency that controls interest rates, influencing whether or not people want to buy a car or a house, take out loans, or credit cards. But they are not controlled by the president. Republicans like capitalism until it doesn't work for them. Somehow every economic downturn becomes the government's fault. But the fact is, sometimes businesses are run badly, sometimes there's natural disasters, and there are a number of things that can affect the economy. Bird flu is currently on the rise and causing a temporary rise in egg prices. Harris has been criticized because of her claim the retail industry is raising prices for no reason. Price gouging. Perhaps that's not the whole story, but I don't think anybody believes large corporations are incapable of taking advantage of a situation and the American people to enhance profits. Republicans want you to believe the Biden administration has caused inflation instead of the capitalists who are in charge of the prices. The free markets can't malfunction. Large corporations do contribute to our society. They create jobs and other things that benefit. But there are always two sides to every coin. They also do harm. Like I said earlier, political parties as a group can enact laws that can change the economic landscape for decades, with or without the president. There are other entities that control what happens in our country. You have the U.S. Congress. You have state legislators. You have governors of every state and territory. Even local governments all play a part. State and local governments are the ones that are going to raise minimum wage, collect taxes for schools, just to name a few. America has lived through numerous downturns, panics, recessions, the Great Recession of 2008, the Great Depression of the 1930s. And what's happening right now in America is nowhere close to any of those. Statistically, the measures we use like GDP, the stock market, and a host of other to determine a good or bad economy are all doing pretty well. But yet Republicans, and especially Donald Trump, want to paint a picture of doom and gloom for political gain. The economy is complicated. It's affected by capitalism, the government, and other elements. So to simplify it through political rhetoric is disingenuous at best. The political consultant James Carville famously said, "It's the economy, stupid." This was during Bill Clinton's run for president in 1992. It was a campaign slogan. I like to turn that around and say it's not the economy, because of all the things I previously mentioned. I don't believe the economy should ever be a campaign issue. Long-term laws that affect the future is another matter, like the ones Harris and Trump have presented. In fact, for me, all the issues put on the table in this particular election are all just distractions from the real issue we need to be concerned with. It's not to say that abortion or the southern border aren't important issues, but I believe the number one issue for any presidential election is the character of the person running. Their character is what's going to dictate how they attempt to run things and what they put on their agenda. Thanks for listening. See you next time.